I'm Melissa Sierra, EVP of Media Integration at U.S. International Media, and I get to do one of my favorite things today, which is pull back the curtain and ask some sharp questions about these buzzwords that are surrounding, omnichannel being this one. As Aaron mentioned, it's in pitch decks, it's in every single RFP, and the truth is very few brands and agencies have cracked the code. The consumer journey is no longer a funnel, it's a pinball machine, and these experts that I have on stage today are really going to share some great learning lessons and pragmatic tips that they've helped to crack that code. So I'm joined by Dylan. She is our disruptor, as we coined her this morning, Austin and I, really orchestrating the full customer experience for one of the world's most impressive omnipresent brands, Coca-Cola. And she's where digital retail data and content come to mix. So if anyone can help us through omnichannel, it's Dylan. Liz is really our innovator. She holds a dual role overseeing media and creative. That doesn't mean she's just talking about aligning messaging and channels. She literally owns both. She's that bridge builder, that challenger of silos, and the keeper of consistency across everything. And then Austin, he's from MissionOne. He is what I've designated the champ, really blocking and tackling everything between strategy and real-world execution. He leads integrated activation, something close and dear to my heart, meaning he's seen every omnichannel vision come to life or completely fall apart. So as we dive right in, on a recent LinkedIn post, I called out that studies show that 73% of customers engage with multiple channels before even making a purchase. Yet many brands are struggling to deliver consistent experiences across platforms. What structural changes do you think are necessary to align internal teams to pull off this customer cross-channel journey? Anybody who wants to start?
Sure, I'll dive in. Let's rip that Band-Aid off. I think one of the big things that kind of keeps us from being able to truly get to an omnichannel approach is that we weren't designed that way from the beginning. We were designed to be more structurally against our tactical executions. So your search teams, your social teams, your programmatic teams, as opposed to having a centralized unit that can take a look at everything across channel. So I think the reason that we see 73% of consumers use multi-channel, that's where omnichannel came from, but yet structurally as businesses, many times we fail to match our internal solutions to what the consumer journey actually looks like.
Yeah, and I would also say it can be an industry problem as well, depending on where you operate. For CPG companies like Coca-Cola, first-party data collection would be great. Unfortunately, there are 10,000, Coca-Cola served every second. And so it's almost impossible to collect all that first-party data or even implement mechanisms at a hotel or in a Walmart, et cetera, that would actually allow you to really understand each and every one of those touch points. So access to data continues to be a pain point for us, especially as we're trying to stitch together that omni-channel journey.
Yeah, I'm also seeing this trend of brands and clients that we work with who are actually forcing their own divides and having brand lives over here and performance lives over here, and they work with different media buying teams and different creative agencies, but who's buying what channel? And so they're just forcing this divide that's just kind of fracturing everything and keeps it from being a consistent experience because, again, the consumer doesn't know, oh, well, this one came from Publicis and this one came from Monk. So it just is, not to throw shade at all the clients, but it's your fault.
We all have a lot of self-awareness work to do. All right,
You're
Dylan.
watching, I'm sorry.
Jumping right in, Dylan. Coca-Cola lives at every touch point, from TikTok to vending machines. How do you define end-to-end when channels like retail media or in-store touch points don't always share data with digital? What's your breakthrough moment and where are you still stuck?
Yeah, so in my role as an end-to-end connections and media manager, I start at the very beginning of the process, setting out audience insights, delivering that into a holistic end-to-end strategy that covers paid, owned, earned, and shared touch points. The key challenge of that being the owned piece of it, where we don't have all the data that we need to really control that last mile or the lower funnel because we're relying on our customers and our partners to execute. So I think, when we set off on this journey of trying to really understand that, we looked at all the data gaps, and if we were to fill them all, the costs of doing so would be so astronomical that it wouldn't make sense for a marketing organization. So really the breakthrough for us has been in prioritizing where we need data critically, and understanding the role that our brand needs to play at specific touch points. Not every single touch point, but very specific touch points that we need to win to stay competitive.
You're not just chasing media efficiency, but you're shaping experiences. Can you share a time when you intentionally chose friction in the journey to boost that brand's perception and loyalty?
Yeah, so a company that's been around for 130 years and always trying to be within an arm's reach of desire from the consumer very rarely tries to increase friction in the journey, I would say. Where I think I'm seeing that turn on its head is with Gen Z, because they don't quite operate or buy like other consumers. I had a really unique opportunity to work on the Oreo flavored Coke and Coke flavored Oreo LTOs, which were, aiming at Gen Z. We wanted to bring these two iconic brands that were so loved by that generation together and do something really fun and special. And one thing I noticed as I was, developing the audience insights and the strategy was the way that we needed to connect with them was going to be fundamentally different than the way we connect with other consumers. And, if you have any Gen Zs in your household or if you talk to them on a daily basis, you know that they love authenticity. They don't want a tightly controlled brand narrative. They don't need your talking points about your campaign specifics. They actually want to hear it from a real person. And so one way that we kind of intentionally increased friction, I would say, in the campaign was taking away, some of those tightly controlled brand narratives and replacing them with genuine, authentic reactions to the product, which was a little bit scary for some of my brand counterparts. As you can imagine, internally, people were a little worried about, some of the reactions being, this product is a little crazy, it's a little wacky. But we really leaned into that. We had two phases of the strategy that we called OMG and WTF. And we leaned into that because we wanted to make sure that Gen Z wasn't just scrolling past this on TikTok, that they actually stopped and listened and wanted to go try the products themselves. So we did influencers doing authentic product testing. We also did comedians leaning in, so podcast hosts who run kind of comedic podcasts, we would have them try it on the mic and give us their unfiltered reactions. And as everybody in this room can imagine, yes, the process of getting all that approved was very lengthy, and we can talk about that over a happy hour, but it really paid off. I think, when a lot of people think about closing that, LTO product with a consumer, they'd only think about lower funnel and product-focused ads and getting people into the retailers, and we flipped that on its head by really putting the microphone in the hands of influencers, and they truly did drive the success of the product.
Liz, I want to turn to you. You lead both media and creative, often at odds. Piggybacking off the last fireside chat, what would you say is the way to not make personalization robotic?
Yeah, I know we were talking about this when we were prepping, and I kind of feel like we've lost the plot on personalization a bit. And, we were laughing about, the days of the Instagram ads of like, here's a t-shirt with your name on it. And I think people think personalization needs to be one-to-one, but we've really found that personalization actually should be more broad. It's about what does this group care about. We work with a personal finance app, and with the tariffs, we'll count that for one, we saw, a huge spike in search for emergency funds. And so we were able to quickly iterate and put social assets out about saving for your emergency fund. So I think it's about personalizing to the group and what, they're all caring about versus trying to get so segmented down to like, what does this individual need? I think that can be off-putting, and it oftentimes doesn't actually work. My husband works at BJ's. I get ads all the time that are like, BJ's, you need this SaaS product. I'm like, you're so close, but like, not quite there. So I think there is a step too far, unless it's like straight up product remarketing because it's in my cart, where you're actually better off just looking at like, what does this specific group or this set of people care about?
Another buzzword within the omnichannel word is scale, and we talk a lot about content at scale. But what's the creative idea that couldn't be scaled because it worked right for one key channel that you've seen?
That's a good question. I actually don't know that I can think of one. We often try I pushed the team really hard. My dream for years was like, I want TikTok ads on CTV. Like, people love to watch TikTok ads. And it killed. It does so well. I think maybe if anyone has figured out like the 300 by 50 banner, maybe Duncan, where it's like just a logo, like, although you can kind of run that anywhere. I don't know that there is one.
On the media side, I found some brands will embrace testing media channels, but not necessarily changing creative, or vice versa. And others are relying on somewhat outdated audience data. As you lead both creative and media, how do you make sure that there's a balance between both and that the right elements are
I
prioritized?
feel like I'm going to totally contradict everything I just said. Like, yes, there are assets that can run everywhere, but there are also platforms that you have to cater to. You cannot just take your 30-second, linear TV spot and run it in TikTok. It's not going to work. So it's a lot about, we're lucky sitting on the media and the creative side. We have a creative strategy team who really sits in between the two, so they know these platforms in depth and can work with our creative team of like, this is what you need, this is what's going to perform. And then on the flip side, they also work closely with our media team to look at the results and feed it back to the creative team. So we're really an analytics-based creative team. Everything we do is performance focused, and it's intended to drive, quick results. And so that allows us to have a really iterative process and take a lot of learnings. And I'm so proud of the team. They've really moved away from like we're going to test a CTA and like color backgrounds and moving to more like what is it that people care about? What are these different personas we need to be targeting? Does UGC perform better than, more of kind of like a glossy spot or something like that. And so really being able to test the fundamentals of the creative to see how they're performing across channels.
I love that. More meaningful meetings, got that? No status meetings, less of that.
Yeah.
Austin, you and I share a similar walk of life overseeing media integration, and activation is where strategy becomes reality, but also sometimes falls apart. I found that when brands are either repurposing content or putting too much stock in platforms, lacking a formidable test and learn strategy, and then outdated KPIs just to survive the day, that's where well-intentioned plans go wrong. With that, what's the most common misstep that you've seen when brands try to go omni-channel?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I echo a lot of the sentiments that have been stated already. To me, it's that we misdefine what omnichannel is from an activation standpoint. We think checking a box and having multiple different tactics on a flow chart is what omnichannel is. And by definition, technically, I think that's right. But if it's not missing, or if it is missing that through line, that kind of strategy underlay that is pinned to everything from what the client understands, and you're aligned to expectations and a learning agenda and a testing framework and a measurement output, then you're just running things in parallel, not kind of in synergy with one another. And that's where I think it falls down in activation a lot, is by the time it gets to activation, it just becomes go do a social campaign and go do a programmatic campaign. And unless you have something that sits kind of a half step above that, that looks at that broader picture and makes sure it's all coming to life together, then omnichannel just won't work. It is just a name and a namesake.
How do you develop the test and learn strategy for brands when they just start with, well, we have a small budget to test? How do you actually get them to do the hard work and sit down and tell the truth and uncover some landmines within it?
I think it's what you just stated. You have to sit down and have some of those tough conversations with your client partners and with your team. If you want to find a business outcome, you have got to have the hard conversations and make sure that they are human in nature to where you can get to a testing-based output. One of the things that I actually love about where the industry is going is a lot of the AI buzzword, yes, is giving us the ability to go quickly, but I think what we're going to start to lose is some of that personal communication. Once you start to automate more, to me, communication needs to increase as well, because we are in a human-focused business. And we're giving machines a lot of the power, which can be very, very good for our speed, but we have to have that communication. We have to align to what a testing framework and output looks like, even if it is a small-scale test, because what we were talking about earlier, it's the margins, I think, that make the difference in a lot of activation. By the time it gets to actually putting things into market, it's that one little incremental purchase or incremental change that you can make to a keyword strategy that can make a big difference.
When brands are developing briefs and they're slapping omnichannel all over it, and scale and reach and sales and awareness and multiple objectives, where's one area that you wish they would go deeper into these briefs and really explaining it a lot more so that the agencies can bring this to life better?
to me, it's truly alignment on what the business objective is. I don't know how many times we get a brief that says, our objective is awareness. And then you actually ask the question, it's a business-based output. That's definitely the goal. So you'd never want to have that misalignment from the beginning, because once you get into reporting or any sort of measurement conversations, if you're under the belief that this is an awareness campaign and you go in and you talk about all the great things we were doing for increasing awareness, and that first question is, well, what's it mean for our sales? You've completely missed the point. You've dropped the ball. So really having, again, those tough conversations at the beginning of, is this actually what you're trying to achieve? How can we get there? Awareness might be the function to get to a business-based output, but really nailing that down, I think, is the most important part.
When is it better not to be omni-channel? Are there moments when focus outweighs fragmentation?
There definitely are. The short answer is when you can't do omni-channel well is probably the answer. If you don't have the team to be able to do it, if you don't have the content and the creative alignment to be able to do it, there are plenty of instances in which a focus is better than fragmentation. Again, back to my first point, just having multiple channels on a flow chart, to have multiple channels will never be the best output. So if you get into a brief, you have alignment with your client partners, and you understand that there is an actual ability to go focused and deep in a given tactic to achieve the goal, do it. Don't be scared to only have one or two partners on a plan. That sometimes is the best way for us. Again, we think our consumers, they use all of these channels, so we must be on all of these channels, and that isn't always the case. There are definitely instances in which specific tactics can be more impactful.
Opening up to the full panel, from news fronts to social media week to media post summits, there's a lot of hype around sports and CTV, emerging platforms like gaming and shoppable video. What are the trends that you have your eye on? And how does that change the conversations that you're having internally, particularly around measurement and content?
Yeah, I mean, live sports is definitely of interest to us. We work with a lot of B2B, and all of a sudden that is everywhere that they want to be. I think it is truly one of the last, purely unskippable. People are still paying attention mostly during the ads. Even I tout podcasts and skip through every single commercial on there. I think it's going to, like everything else, kind of get conflated, so you have to get really specific about how am I buying this, where is this coming from. A lot of the big ones are going to be sold out in the upfronts. We're talking to Amazon. Thursday Night Football is already completely sold out. So I think it's about being really specific with your clients about what does live sports mean to you? Who is this audience? How do we want to go about trying to reach them? Where will they be consuming this? So just like anything else, it's about being really intentional with your approach. And kind of the same with everything. There's so many different access points. I think it's all about what is important, what's going to drive that success. Do you need to be able to activate certain audiences? Do you need certain measurement or certain tracking, or is it just about showing up and being there?
Yeah, and building off of what you said earlier, Liz, I do think you're going to start to see more influencers and creators showing up in channels outside of social. Once we can get it approved by our brand and business colleagues, I think there's so much creative potential there and so much cost savings, frankly, that you can have when you're, creating with these people directly rather than doing large production shoots, or even thinking about creative productions where you bring creators into your production shoot. That was something really interesting I saw on our Simply Pop campaigns recently. We did a big, like a typical shoot, but we actually brought the influencers onto the set and let them film their own content there, which was really special. I get excited about CTV. What I continue to struggle with is the costs of CTV is a really premium environment. If I layer on all my data costs, as you were saying, and some other things, brand safety and everything else, it does get challenging to scale in that specific tactic. So interested in ways that I can tap into premium CTV inventory at a lower cost.
Yeah, same with all of this. The one thing I would add is anything that's trying to remove friction for the consumer, I think, is an important thing as we continue throughout the next few years. I think that's why sports does so well, is it is a live environment that the consumer is just leaned into fully. So whether you're trying to sell them on that platform or not, they remove all of the friction because they are leaned in. A consumer is leaned in where they might not be when they're leaned back, looking and scrolling and doom scrolling through TikTok or Meta. But finding those instances where we can capture that audience and then make it really simple for them to actually take whatever action we want them to take. God love humans, we are a lazy group, and the more things you put in front of them to take an action that you want them to take, the less likely they're going to do it. It's just the way we are. You make it simple for us, and we'll do what you want us to do.
All right, rapid fire. One word, one truth. What's one misleading, omnipresent buzzword, omnichannel, excuse me, and what would you replace it with?
I think I know what you're going to say, and I'm going to steal it. Multi-touch attribution. I would replace it with holistic measurement. Dare I say? Look at your all-in cost. Try not to pay too much attention channel by channel. No one's going to listen to me anyway. But yeah, that is the goal that I think we're moving to, of trying to get away from thinking we can control every single aspect and that everyone's going to behave the same, and just move to a more general, like, this is where my audience is. If they see my ads, they're more likely to buy my product. A simpler time.
Yeah, and I would jump even to the other end of the spectrum of one-to-one personalization as the buzzword that needs to die. I have seen it overpromised. I mean, I used to work in consulting, so definitely overpromised and underdelivered in a lot of instances, and really difficult to execute. I mean, like I said, when you're selling a massive amount of volume of product that we sell, if you were trying to predict every time somebody was having a Diet Coke, I mean, it would cost you an astronomical amount of money to really understand that on an individualized basis and be able to adapt it consistently as culture changes, as behaviors change, as shopping habits change, as people move around the country. And so I'm replacing one-to-one personalization with thoughtful audience strategies that are designed to scale, and really thinking about communities of consumers at a macro level who do share common interests and behaviors and mindsets and life stages, and trying to really tailor for them versus, really trying to crack the code on a super complicated ad tech stack that's going to deliver that one-to-one personalization.
Yeah, Alice stole mine. Attribution was 100% what I was going to say. So if I go a different direction, it's not that I think that the word needs to change or go away. It's I think our perception of what performance means in the industry needs to adjust. I think it was Aaron that mentioned it. We've went through these years where we've been so right side, it's got to be brand, that's the way you're going to win. Nope, it's got to be performance, that's the way it's got to win. All of this in the end is one big system that we need to put together that performs for us. So performance can be anything from the lowest touch attribution to the highest of funnels brand initiatives and high engagement tactics. We've got to get back to an industry that talks about the consumer first. They don't care about performance. They don't necessarily care about what we call brand. They want to just be engaged with who you are on a personal level.
All right, last question. If you had full control of budget, teams, and tech, what's one thing that you would build to finally crack the omnichannel code?
Hot take, none of those. I would add time and get my clients and teams to understand that we're not going to learn everything in 2 weeks. We're never going to know exactly what drove that conversion. So being able to have the time to actually run thoughtful tests and run incrementality tests and really, try different channels and markets at different times to work our way towards that optimal media mix, because that really should be the goal.
Yeah, I would just say preach on the time aspect of it. We were just talking about how getting teams to slow down and just take a breath sometimes is the most important thing you could do to get your head above water and understand what's going on. For me, one thing that's always frustrated me throughout my career, as I've worked in a variety of companies, B2B, B2C, all the things, is human insights kind of living in this separate organization where they produce these annual reports, or really just reports that are tailored towards executives on a daily basis. And I would love to see more human insights people owning the voice of customer at a team level and being really embedded within the day-to-day with the media and creative folks who are kind of planning and executing. I think it's a huge miss that we don't have kind of the voice of customer always sitting on every team and guiding our decisions, or someone who can kind of take the decisions we're making in real time, bring them back to a panel of real people and say, is that resonating? Especially with Gen Z. I mean, sometimes we really think we've got it, we understand it, and then we miss the mark. So I think having that feedback loop, having those insights embedded within a team is really my dream, because at the end of the day, I always want to pressure test what I'm doing against the reality of consumer behavior.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's kind of how we structured Barkley OKRP, is to have that strategic lens that runs all the way through to media and execution. I think to add on, two systems that I would want to put in place is a better system for true communication. I know I already stated that, so I don't want to belabor those points, but really making sure that we are having the proper discussions at the right time. But then, and Liz hit this earlier, going beyond what A/B testing is on a creative standpoint and actually getting to a measurement solution. AI is going to help us a lot in this space to actually tell you what is impactful about your ads. It's not just is the color red or blue, but is there an emotional tone? Is there a product tone? Is there a specific location-based piece of a content that is making it resonate more with our consumers? So the much more macro level kind of multivariate based testing that is really hard to measure from a personal perspective and looking at just data sets. AI is going to be able to help us a lot in that, and being able to continue to develop what we're doing in that space, I think, will be important.
Thank you, everybody. With that, stay bold, stay curious. You don't need the right answers, you just need the right questions.
All right, we have a couple minutes left for questions. I will add my overused word. This grinds my gears, guys. And if you use it, I will not invite you back to this conference. Data lake. Ugh. Awful. Like, who came up with that? Was it someone in this room? No. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shantae Joseph. I'm here with MP Digital. In the beginning, I believe it was Liz that said that it's less of a funnel now and more of a pinball machine. Can you elaborate more on what you mean by that? And then also just with what you're seeing in the market, how would you better approach funnel analysis as you start your research before kind of optimizing your campaigns?
Those are Melissa's beautiful words and so accurate, but I'm still thrilled to tackle this conversation. I totally agree. I think there was a report that came out from Boston Consulting Group a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, about the 4 S's, and I think that really, I love the structure of it, of not thinking about, oh, how much money is in awareness, how much money is in consideration, how much is in conversion, because it doesn't work like that. We cannot control those steps, and so the 4 S's is more about what is your investment in search versus shopping versus scrolling versus streaming, and where are people consuming and how are you allocating your budget across all of those different places where people will be receiving your ads. I always joke about like out of home. I actually don't think there is a channel that falls in any top or bottom of the funnel truly. I think it is the creative. If you think about Chick-fil-A, like you're driving down the highway and there will be a billboard that just says eat more chicken. Like that to me is putting that brand front and center. And then there's one that says, you know, take this exit. That to me is the most direct response ad that you can get. So I think it's a lot more about trying to understand where the consumer is, what is the mindset, how do you make the creative to deliver the best, most relevant message to them in that moment.
And I would,
pinball machine is because it's
I would add on to that. It's like, you know, different consumers are playing on different pinball machines too. I think like our Gen Z consumers are moving at lightning speed across channels and between content, from discovery and shopping to inspiration. The speed at which they're going through the different touch points is honestly incredible. I think where it becomes more challenging too is as you go up in the life stages, your consumers get busier, they have less time, and so nailing that moment that they're in that mindset of shopping or discovery or entertainment is even more difficult because they're not willing to give you as much of their time. And so that's really a big challenge I think we still have to crack.
Any other questions for our panelists?
This question's for, my name is Matt Giordino. I'm the Director of Performance Marketing and Analytics at McKay Advertising. And this question's for Dylan. You talked a little bit about influencers and utilizing, influencers in multiple channels outside of social media. One thing that I've noticed lately is the rise of like AI-generated influencers. And I was just wondering your opinion on, how you see that impacting the overall influencer space, as well as, the overall impact on limiting production costs.
It is an interesting question. In my work to date, I have not partnered with AI influencers, and I think that comes back to, the ways that we are trying to bring our brand messaging to life for some of these specific consumer groups. Like I mentioned with Gen Z, authenticity is really important. So can you deliver authenticity with those AI-generated influencers? I think those are some of the conversations that we're having today. And even while, the AI generated content can maybe potentially help you save on costs, you are going to lose something with it. And so I think that relationship that we have with our influencers is just as important to us as the content that's outputted at the end of the day. Making sure that we're building connections with communities. I mean, the word of mouth that comes from, oh my gosh, you got a Coke deal, or you made it, if you got this Coke ad. So I really think there's more to producing this content than just the final output. There's more to building relationships with people, especially creators, for the long term, than just thinking about the efficiencies that could be gained from AI.
Yeah, I can say I manage our influencer team as well. I prefer my AI back of the house doing the analytics, not front of the house. And I think at some point, you'll be able to tell the difference, and consumers will know that and see that and trash it. And it's not a risk we're willing to take.
Melissa, Liz, Dylan, Austin, thank you guys so much for keeping us going this morning.